coming on the air tonight with the U.S. saying Russia was flat out lying, and they've got the receipts to prove it. The Pentagon says it doesn't want an apology from the Kremlin. We'll get into what they do want and what it means for tensions with Russia tonight. Plus, we're hearing for the first time from the family of a black man who died in state custody. 10 arrests in all. We're just learning, now made in his murder. New details the family describes as shocking coming up. Then a new bill in Florida could ban fifth-grade girls from talking about their periods. It's the newest push to build on the state's controversial Don't Say Gay law, as critics call it. And as you can imagine, it has everybody talking. We're going to have more on that coming up in the show, including with our newsmaker tonight, a member of the president's cabinet, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. Plus, how all those mental health buzzwords you hear online might be being misused, creating more problems than they're meant to solve. We've got that in tonight's original later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and tonight we're hearing from the Pentagon not long ago saying they do not want Russia to say sorry after its plane intercepted a U.S. drone over the Black Sea. Instead, they just want to support Ukraine in its fight against Russia, saying the Americans are committed to keeping U.S. planes in international airspace. They're not going to back down on that front. The Pentagon officials say the newly declassified video you're looking at proves that Russia is wrong when it denies having anything to do with the collision between one of its planes and a U.S. drone. So look at that, right? The Pentagon says, framing this as kind of the receipts, this is a Russian jet coming in. Look at that stuff coming out the bottom. That's the fuel that the Pentagon says the plane is dumping before clipping the drone's propeller, they say. They say this footage was edited for length before they released it. Listen.
Our words and our actions speak for themselves, and similarly, Russia's inaccurate information, false information, obfuscation, grasping at straws, changing narratives also speaks for itself. So we're going to stay focused on the facts, and we're going to stay focused on our mission.
Keep in mind, the Kremlin officials denied that its planes came into contact with the drone and said the U.S. was to blame here. Since this video came out, no update from them. But the U.S. Air Force in Europe is releasing this map today, showing the rough locations, approximately, of where this whole thing went down right in the Black Sea. The concern now, of course, is what this all means moving forward for tensions between the U.S. and Russia as Russia keeps up its invasion of Ukraine. We know that Washington has called this move dangerous and reckless. I want to bring in Courtney Kuby, who is the tip of the spear for us on all the reporting on this front, joining us now live from the Pentagon. So, Court, we had talked about 24 hours ago about the possibility that maybe this video would come out. Now it is out. People have seen it. We've heard from the Pentagon late this afternoon. Where does this go next, based on the sources you're talking to?
So, I mean, we're waiting to see if there is any response from the Russian government about this now that the video shows what supports at least some of the U.S. side of this narrative, right? So first off, the U.S. saying that the Russian pilots were flying in a very erratic and reckless and unprofessional manner, dumping the fuel, as you can see in the video there, that it looks like a vapor or a cloud sort of because of the altitude, clearly shown in those videos. We don't see the actual collision. In fact, you see the propeller intact, then the video pixelates and it comes back on and you see a busted up propeller. So it seems that that is the collision point. But no matter what, the video, for the most part, really supports the U.S. narrative. Now, we'll see if the Russians come back and say and say that they have some evidence that, in fact, their side of the story is true. But so far, we have not heard that, Hallie.
We also know that 3 defense officials and a member of the Biden administration say that Russia has already gotten to the area where the drone crashed, where the Air Force crash landed it into the Black Sea. This is interesting because presumably, Court, if it did drop down and smash into like a billion pieces, what really is there for Russia to recover, especially if it's all 5,000 feet under the surface of the ocean here? Question is, though, what could the Russians get? How worried is the U.S. about that?
So it seems to me that it's less about being able to exploit any of the material they're able to get and bring up from the bottom of the Black Sea and maybe put back together, whatever that would look like, and more about the potential for propaganda here, right? So let's say they are able to recover some large pieces of it and then take photos of it and show that they have this American surveillance asset and whatever kind of claims they want to make about it. That's the most potentially damaging piece of this. According to the officials we're speaking with, not only do they black out the software, but they claim that the hardware itself doesn't present any kind of a real security risk if the Russians or any kind of enemy or adversary were to get their hands on it. So it seems like it's really the propaganda piece here that they're most concerned about, if the Russians are able to get it at all.
So real quick, Court, bottom line, video's out. The U.S. says it shows what it shows. Russia, we haven't heard from. Is this where this ends, or does it depend on how the Russians react to the video being released?
There doesn't seem to be any military escalation going, so unless this moves forward in some other diplomatic way or we see really high-level discussions between the White House and the Kremlin, I don't know where else it can really go from here, Hallie.
Courtney Kube, live for us at the Pentagon, leading us off tonight. Court, thank you very much. Let's take a look over on Wall Street with the markets a little bit more optimistic tonight after a big push, a kind of Wall Street rescue for a regional bank, First Republic. You see the Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ all in the green after a rough couple of days in the middle of this, what some are calling a global banking crisis that's happening. Here's the deal. Just within the last little bit, we saw 11 banks, these banks you see on screen, say they're going to put $30 billion into First Republic, after the First Republic stock has been on a roller coaster ride the past couple days. This is like these banks kind of riding to the rescue in many ways. While that's all going down now, we're also finding out that the top execs at First Republic apparently sold millions of dollars of company stock months ago because of all this panic, according to some exclusive reporting from the Wall Street Journal. So what is First Republic saying about all of these new developments? We don't really know. We haven't heard anything really public from them since Monday, when the bank's CEO said it wasn't seeing people trying to pull out money because they're worried. Since then, no update. All of it, of course, adds to the uncertainty around potentials for banks collapsing, a so-called contagion spreading. You've got Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, a couple of blocks from where I'm sitting on the Capitol today, telling lawmakers and telling the country now is not the time to have a panic attack. Brian Chung is joining us now. So, Brian, good to see the markets in green, at least from a, freak out perspective, right? Now you have First Republic getting this lifeline from these other banks, right? Not from the government, but from other banks who are sort of pumping money into it to bolster it. Good news tonight? Is that where we are at, 5:06 Eastern?
Yeah, well, I mean, at least the stock market seems to like it. But look, we need to recap exactly what's happening here because it's pretty remarkable. So as you mentioned, 11 banks came around the table essentially today and joined hands and said, we're going to try to stop the deposits bleeding at First Republic, which, by the way, is a fellow top 15 large bank in this country, by putting in deposits into the bank, right? If you have deposits that are flowing out, we can stop this by putting a lot more money back in. That's what happened when they agreed to add $30 billion in funds to the bank. Now, all of this comes after the government already made a pretty extraordinary move over the weekend following the failure of Silicon Valley Bank and also Signature Bank to try to backstop the banking industry by offering liquidity through the Federal Reserve and also guaranteeing all the deposits of the two banks that failed. So what's happening here is a private sector effort, although there's been reporting that maybe the U.S. Treasury and the government was sort of coalescing around the banks to do this, that they continued to needed this type of liquidity to stop the bleeding here. We'll have to see if that stops any other concerns at other banks, Hallie.
What about the reaction from lawmakers, right? The Treasury Secretary was there, but you are seeing some reaction. Some I've seen just in the last couple of minutes here that are like, hey, it's good that it was big banks stepping in to try to help First Republic and not the government. At the same time, there is sort of a broader concern here about how sustainable something like this is.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, when we talk about what's happening here, there's this interesting line here where the FDIC insured all the deposits at the two banks that failed. But Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen clarified to lawmakers today that every other bank that wasn't part of those failures over the weekend still is adherent to that $250,000 limit on deposits. So does that create an unequal level playing field? Either way, the Treasury is very concerned about the spillover effects of what's happening in the banking industry. Take a listen to what she said with regards to how all of this affects the economy.
We felt that there was a serious risk of contagion that could have brought down and triggered runs on many banks. Depositors should have confidence in the system, and we took these actions.
And that was the takeaway message. Depositors should feel confident about what's happening in the system, something that I'm sure they'll continue to watch, especially after that private sector $30 billion infusion to First Republic today, Hallie.
For sure. Big news. Brian Chung, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We are just hearing from the White House today as we find out they've basically given the Chinese owners of TikTok an ultimatum. Sell your stake or your app's going to get banned in the United States. The point, they say, is privacy. Listen.
Bottom line is that when it comes to potential threats to our national security, when it comes to the safety of Americans, when it comes to their privacy, we're going to speak out.
So pull back and think about the bigger picture here. TikTok is owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance. The Chinese government owns a stake in ByteDance. So the concern is really about how much access the Chinese government has to the data of people who use TikTok. And a lot of people use TikTok, 100 million of us in this country. That is why the government is worried, with one top intelligence official going so far as to call this app, to call TikTok a loaded gun. You can bet the head of TikTok is going to have to answer to that next week when he headlines a super high-profile hearing in front of Congress. Monica Alba is following for us all of every development on this front. Live for us just outside the White House. Mon, it is an interesting and notable shift in the way that the Biden administration is messaging about TikTok. They've been under some pressure from lawmakers on Capitol Hill to do something like this, get a little more muscular on TikTok. Talk us through the implications.
Yeah, it's definitely a more aggressive stance than we've seen before here, Hallie. And that is because, according to the Biden administration, this is really a situation where there are national security concerns. Now, there was already an ongoing review by the government about how some of this data could be used by the Chinese government potentially. That remains and is ongoing. So what's new today is this sort of threat that is being put forward, though we understand nothing is final here. This isn't decided. And again, this is something that the U.S. is telling this Chinese-owned company sell, or maybe you'll be banned in the U.S. But the question is, how would that even be enforced? How would that work? We know that we've seen TikTok banned from some government-owned devices, but how would it really work for, like you said, the millions of people who use this every day? As even a news source, a third of people in that threats hearing that you were talking about just recently, that was one of the main points. A third of people who are on TikTok get their news from there. A ton of young people use it. So there are major implications about how this all would really work. But the reason that the White House says they're watching it so closely is because potentially some of this data, your phone could be hacked. And also it's a way that the White House says that China could spread and continue to spread some propaganda. So the fact is, it's personal data, it's millions of people, but I'm told nothing is going to be decided in the coming weeks or even months. This is going to take a long time to really figure out, Hallie.
You've got the UK announcing today that it's going to ban TikTok on government devices. That's already happening here in the U.S. When I've reported on TikTok, what you hear from the company is this idea that, like, these steps are not going to solve any concern, right? That they want to negotiate and work with officials in these countries, specifically the U.S., to try to get to some sort of agreement on this.
Yeah, and another possible avenue, the company said in a statement, is this idea of more third-party monitoring and vetting that could help shore up some of the privacy concerns. So that's one thing. But the TikTok company and spokesperson said today, essentially, they don't even think this idea of potentially divesting would actually change the restriction of how information flows. And that doesn't get to some of these national security concerns. So they feel like this potential threat, even if they did it, wouldn't get to the heart of what some people are worried about here. And we should point out on both sides of the aisle, right, Hallie, there's bipartisan legislation that could address this.
Monica Alba live for us there in Washington. Mon, thanks. We're getting a new look today at what went down in that Georgia investigation of former President Trump's push to overturn the 2020 election results, and a new signal that Donald Trump, now a presidential candidate again, could be facing some real legal heat. You've got the Georgia grand jury's foreperson. Remember her? We interviewed her back in February. She's now telling NBC News about another call that apparently prosecutors felt these grand jurors needed to hear. It happened in December 2020. So think about that, like a month after Election Day, as Mr. Trump and his campaign were pushing hard to try to tank the legitimate results of the election. Remember, he had rather infamously called up the Secretary of State to tell him to find the votes. But there was another call, too, with somebody else on the other end of the line. That's what we're finding out about now. The Republican Speaker of the House. Mr. Trump apparently pressured the Speaker, David Ralston, to call a special legislative session meant to somehow overturn Georgia's vote in favor of Joe Biden. In this 10-minute conversation with Mr. Trump, Ralston was apparently not at all into this. After the president asked who could possibly stop him from doing this, Ralston responded, quote, "A federal judge, that's who." So what now? Now it is up to the Fulton County District Attorney to pursue or not pursue an indictment. NBC's Blaine Alexander joins us now. It is an interesting piece to a bigger puzzle. And the reason why it feels significant now, Blaine, is because we are in this waiting period. Is the Fulton County DA going to bring charges, try to indict Mr. Trump? Will she not try to do that? I mean, that's the bigger picture here.
Absolutely. And all we can do really while we are in this waiting period, Hallie, is kind of look at little bits of evidence and what we do know about this investigation. So that's why this is so interesting, because remember, before yesterday, we didn't know that there was any such a phone call that had been recorded. We didn't know, certainly, that the body that was investigating the former president and his actions in 2020 around Georgia we didn't know that this was something that they were considering. So now we know that this is something that was brought before them as evidence. We know that it's something that likely factored into the report, the final report that they presented to the DA. And we can assume that it's certainly something that the DA herself is considering as she weighs whether or not to bring any sort of charges. So, you know, it really is interesting because it's the same. It runs parallel, at least, to that other phone call that we know. We now know that there were 2 phone calls that the former president made to Georgia officials asking them to take some sort of action to overturn Joe Biden's victory here in the state. Now, for the former president's part, he's pushing back on this through a spokesperson, putting out a pretty strong statement today, essentially saying that Democrats, calling them woke radical DAs in New York and Atlanta, are allowing crime to run rampant in their cities. While they choose to be obsessed with persecuting President Trump, Democrats continue to weaponize the justice system against President Trump, who has done absolutely nothing wrong. Now, of course, this echoes many of the statements that the former president and his team have put out about this investigation here in Fulton County, but certainly the knowledge of this phone call and that it's something that's being considered is certainly interesting in all of this, Hallie.
For sure. No word on timeline yet, right, on how long this sort of waiting period is going to go, Blaine?
Absolutely not. It's something that we're all waiting for.
That's
And,
right.
you know, the DA has said that decisions are imminent. She says she's getting close to, you know, certainly looking into this. But she has made the point that just because the special grand jury's investigation is over doesn't mean that her own investigation's over. She's got all the pieces before her. We just don't know when she'll make a decision on this, Hallie.
Blaine Alexander, thank you very much. Good to see you. Today, we are hearing for the first time from the family of a Virginia man since his death in police custody, as 3 more people are being charged in his murder. 28-year-old Ivo Otieno died on March 6th after being arrested and physically restrained while being admitted to a hospital. His family says he has a history of mental illness. An attorney for the family says video of the death shows him being treated in what the lawyer calls a subhuman manner. The lawyers and a county prosecutor say he was smothered by police officer as he was on the ground in handcuffs and leg shackles. He died from asphyxiation, they say. His mother and brother saw a video of the incident today. Here's what they said.
My son was treated like a dog, worse than a dog. I saw it with my own eyes on the video.
Horrible, horrible.
He was treated inhumanely, and it was traumatic, and it was systematic. He was murdered. They smothered the breath out of my baby.
The 3 hospital workers charged today are in addition to 7 sheriff's deputies who have already been charged with second-degree murder. They will appear in court Tuesday. All of them have been put on administrative leave. Marissa Parra is following the story. She is joining us now. Tell us more about this news conference. You can hear, I think, obviously the pain in his mother's voice as she's talking about what she had to see.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine that was right after her family had seen that video for the very first time. We're talking about the final moments of her son that she had to watch right before standing in front of everyone and describing what she saw. So the timeline here is important. We've obviously heard from police and authorities on what their account is on what happened. So we had heard already that on March 3rd, there was a call about a possible burglary. And so the family attorneys here were saying today, for the very first time, we were hearing their side, which is that a neighbor had called the police because I guess he was gathering solar lights on neighbor's property. Okay. But again, I think the overarching theme that they're trying to stress today is that this was a mental health crisis disastrously handled. So they apparently had placed him under an emergency custody order and then allegedly had assaulted Henrico police officers at a different hospital. And this was what comes next is a big point of contention that family attorneys were talking about today. They said they didn't understand why what came next happened, which was that he was transferred from that original hospital to the local jail. And that it was then, after he was transferred from the local jail to a different hospital, that is what he did not survive after he got into a scuffle. You talked about it yourself just now.
Right.
There's video. There's not just neighbor video that they talked about taken on a cell phone on March 3rd, but on March 6th, there's surveillance video from both the jail and the hospital. And it's from the Commonwealth's attorney that we heard her account of what the video shows and the family attorney's account of what the video shows. And they allege that you see those 7 deputies restraining him. He's face down for 12 minutes, putting their knee on top of him, at least at one point. And so their questions today was, why was a knee used on someone who's having a mental health crisis?
We're showing some of the pictures of the deputies who've been charged. We learned today 3 more people have been charged now. Again, deputies charged with second-degree murder here. Talk to us about that piece of it.
Yeah, so that came down today. The 3 additional folks who were charged, we understand, at least at the time of his death, they were working at the hospital. And so we asked about that. NBC crews asked what their involvement was. And according to family attorneys, they also got involved physically later on. They said the video shows this. Now, important to keep in mind, we have not seen that video. No one outside of the family, the Commonwealth's attorney, has seen that video, at least not publicly, not the media. But again, all of this coming from representation and the Commonwealth's attorney in terms of what it shows.
Marissa Parr, thank you so much for reporting on that for us tonight. Appreciate it. We all remember those really high gas prices last year, right? While the oil companies were making some real profits, well, a new move announced by ExxonMobil today should help pump more gas, more oil into the market. Their refinery in Texas is expanding, meaning it's going to add 250,000 barrels of oil per day, making it one of the biggest refineries in the country. It comes as we're getting some mixed messaging from President Biden and his administration, accusing the industry of purposely underproducing, right? And purposely not making enough in order to spike gas prices, but also the emphasis on the need for clean energy and the effect that these refineries have on the environment. I want to bring in Kayla Tausche, who's in Beaumont, Texas tonight at that plant. Here's the bottom line, Kayla, and here's what people care about, I think, when they look at oil or whatever. What does it mean when I go to the gas station? What does it mean for me as I'm thinking about my Memorial Day, start of summer road trip here?
Well, it might not mean that much right now here on March 16th, 2023, Hallie, but let's talk a little bit about how this works and why it could have an impact. So at this facility behind me, they have pipelines that are shipping in crude oil, which looks like this when it goes in, and then it goes into these massive cauldrons behind me. It gets boiled down, and it comes out looking like this. This is diesel fuel that powers a whole host of things that you know and love. So it goes into these cauldrons, it gets boiled, it gets separated out into different types of energy that produce different products for cars, trucks, planes, even feedstock for animals. Now, this expanded facility can produce enough diesel to power 60,000 long-haul trucks a day, but that's when the facility is at its peak. Right now, this place, just like many other companies, are operating just below that because consumers are a little jittery. They don't know where the economy is going, and they don't know if they're confident enough to start spending on all of that travel. Here's what Gas Buddy's Patrick DeHaan told me today.
I think there's a lot of open-ended questions about the economy. Obviously, the current banking situation or crisis is one that could be worrisome and could slow down the overall growth in the economy. So whether or not we really need this capacity, whether it's as critical as it would have been last year, it really remains to be seen.
So for that reason, the EIA expects at this exact moment, this expansion would shave just pennies off the per gallon price at the pump. But if, say, there's a hurricane or the economy gets a lot stronger in the summer, that impact could be a lot bigger, Hallie.
That is for sure. Kayla Tausche live for us there on the road in Beaumont, Texas. Kayla, safe travels back home. Appreciate it. Coming up, it is obviously day 1 of March Madness, and you've got top seed Alabama playing now under a cloud of controversy. Under a shadow, frankly. We'll talk about what's going on with one of its star players and the way things are looking a little bit different right now. Plus, a little bit of good news for all the Swifties watching, what Taylor Swift has planned for tonight in our 5 things. Say goodbye to what may be your favorite Dunkin' drink. We'll tell you what it's discontinuing in just a sec in the 5 things. But first, it is, I don't have to tell you, the first day of March Madness. Spoiler if you don't want to know. Also, who doesn't want to know about these? #1 seeded University of Alabama Yes, they are on track to get their first win of the tournament over Texas A&M Corpus Christi. But here's the thing. There's been a shadow hanging over what should be a good vibes only potential championship run for the team. Take a look. This is an armed security guard assigned to protect the star player for the Crimson Tide, Brandon Miller, in Birmingham. Why? Because Miller's coach says Miller's been getting threats after court testimony said he transported a gun belonging to then teammate Darius Miles back in January, who was then involved hours later in the murder of a woman in Tuscaloosa. Miles was cut from the team and is currently facing murder charges. Brandon Miller's attorney says his client never touched the gun and never knew that anything illegal would take place. Miller has not been charged with any crime. The University of Alabama says he's cooperating as a witness. And this is a big deal for Miller because he's not just the star of his team, right? Top seed in the bracket this season. He's also expected to be one of the top picks in the NBA draft. Sam Brock joins us now with the latest. And I listen, the coach of Alabama here, Nate Oates, has been pretty protective of his players, but this is a moment where we said it. There is a shadow hanging over this team.
This tournament this year, Hallie, is unlike any NCAA tournament we have ever seen before. And obviously there's always excitement and buzz and last-second shots, but you really can't think of an analogous situation to this one. And that pressure obviously is having an effect because today Alabama did run away in their first-round matchup. Brandon Miller, Hallie, who averages 20 points a game, was 0 of 5, 0 of 3 from downtown, 0 points. The best player in the tournament did not score in this opening game. Now, the coach, you mentioned Nate Oates a second ago initially, he didn't even acknowledge Miller's involvement in what happened until it came out in court.
Right.
But a police officer testified that Miller was texted to bring the weapon, and that's when the coach started addressing this for the first time anyway, and then said he was in the wrong spot at the wrong time, had to roll that back and apologize, and ultimately has placed the focus on the family that was affected by this brutal violence. Now, as far as what Oates said about the security guard that you just mentioned, take a listen.
If you guys saw some of what I've seen sent his way, I think you'd understand some of the messages from people that can sit behind fake email addresses, but who knows whether they're real or not.
Hallie, I spoke with someone who covers college basketball for USA Today, Dan Woken, and I asked him, have you ever seen a situation like this where an armed security guard was inside of an arena during the NCAA tournament? Never in his career for decades has he seen that until now.
You know, and this is not, I mean, listen, Alabama, as we said, and if people are watching us now, presumably they're watching us on a split screen with the tournament, right? If they're into NCAA basketball, because it's happening as we speak. Alabama's going to win, almost certainly going to win more games, right? Like, they're a very good team. They're a #1 seed in this tournament. And you have Brandon Miller, who's got a lot on the line, obviously, including the fact that he is projected to be picked pretty high in the NBA draft here. Talk through some of that, like the way that there are implications beyond just this tournament.
Yeah, it's a great point. And this is not just a guy. This is the best player in college basketball, as you talk to those who really follow the sport and followed Alabama throughout there. He was the SEC Player of the Year, the Freshman of the Year, and the MVP of the SEC tournament. That had never been done in the history of NCAA basketball until Brandon Miller. So this is a high-level prospect, top 5, top 3 pick level prospect. And the question becomes, is this going to impact his draft stock? I come back to the fact, Hallie, that there have been no charges so far against Brandon Miller, and the school has not taken any punitive action either. And when I asked what the feeling is like around college basketball from Dan Woken at USA Today, he said there is dismay in the sports world that Alabama has not done more. We are going to cover that on NBC Nightly News this evening.
We'll look for that. We'll look to see what happens at any post-game press conference. You'll be all over it here on NBC News, on NBC News Now. Sam Brock, it is good to see you, as always. Thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Poland says it's going to send about 4 fighter jets to Ukraine in the next few days. It's a pretty big deal. They're the first NATO member to respond to Ukraine's request for these warplanes. Poland's president says a few more will ultimately be handed over, but they've got to be fixed up first. Number 2, the U.S. military is looking into the death of a female soldier at Fort Hood. Officials have not released any details about who she is or the circumstances around her death, but said in a statement that her family would be given support and what they're calling all releasable information. This is the same base, remember, where another female soldier, Vanessa Guillen, was killed in 2020 after being sexually harassed. Number 3, Pfizer says it's working on some new packaging for its migraine drug after a recall from the CPSC because of safety concerns. Apparently, the packaging that came in initially is just too easy for little kids to open. The agency says you don't have to actually throw away the tablets if you have them, but that anybody with little kids should contact the company to get a child-resistant pouch. Number 4, Dunkin' Donuts is saying goodbye to the beloved Dunkachino. Sad news tonight. This chocolate coffee drink that so many love around the country. It's been on the menu for 23 years. Dunkin' says it's looking for new ways to innovate. They hinted the drink could make a return someday. Maybe it becomes like the fish fillet of drinks. Who knows? Number 5, big news for Swifties. At midnight tonight, Taylor Swift will release 4 songs ahead of the kickoff for her Eras Tour tomorrow. She'll drop 2 brand new songs and then 2 Taylor's versions of songs that have been out before, Eyes Open and If This Was a Movie. She is trying to build some momentum ahead of that Eras Tour that kicks off in Glendale, a.k.a. Swift City. Very, very short 24 hours from now. When we come back, there's a lot going on when it comes to education in America. And I bet you got questions about teacher strikes, student loans, and what can and cannot be said in some classrooms. We're talking about all of it in our new Newsmaker segment tonight with Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. He's with us in just a minute. To a bill being floated in Florida now that would ban girls in elementary school from talking about their periods. Listen.
Little girls experience their menstrual cycle in 5th grade or 4th grade. Will that prohibit conversations from them since they are in a grade lower than 6th grade?
It would.
So that's an acknowledgement that this bill, as written currently, would prevent elementary school girls, 4th, 5th grade, from talking about that kind of thing. It's because the bill only allows any discussion on, you see it here, anything related to human sexuality, et cetera, to start in middle school, in 6th grade. It is the latest push in Florida to build on that very controversial law that critics call the Don't Say Gay law, and works to restrict discussion of sexual orientation and gender identities in some grades in the state's schools. I want to bring in Rahema Ellis, who's reporting on this for us. You know, Rahema, I got my period in 7th grade. Some girls get their period earlier than that. Some girls get their period later than that. Point being, it's different for everybody. And so this bill would, as written, prohibit girls that age, right, younger than 6th grade, from talking to, let's say, teachers about it, learning about it. There is maybe an amendment that would take that away, but talk to us more broadly about this push and what it means.
Well, you're right. There's a potential that this amendment would take away some of the restrictions on teachers from discussing something that's very important that does happen to children in elementary school and before they get to middle school. And it seemed as though some are saying that the legislator, the male Republican legislator who proposed this, wasn't thinking about any of those things. It hadn't occurred to him and maybe had not had a conversation with some women who might have clarified that for him. And so the clarification came after this question from the Democrat female legislator who asked a question about how far this would go. Take a listen.
Will teachers be penalized if, for instance, their students get their menstrual cycle in school and they don't know what to do?
We haven't contemplated that, but that would not be the intent of the bill.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be the intention. And so he's saying that he would be open to an amendment to the bill that would clarify teachers would not find themselves penalized or reprimanded if they had that sort of discussion and helped little girls out if they needed such help in elementary school. Hallie?
When you step back, Rahema, this is a state that we've talked about a lot, right? I mean, it's been in the news a lot for its policies, its laws, the proposed bills as it relates to education and what people can and cannot talk about in the classroom. This feels of a piece of some of that.
Oh, it certainly is. It's an extension of that, you know, including the fact that this particular bill would go on and it proposes that Florida would also, schools, they would be required to teach, here's what they can teach, that sex is determined at birth and that it's binary, and that is unchangeable. This is something that goes along with the questions about, in Florida, there is the Don't Say Gay bill, and what you can teach and what you can't teach, particularly in the elementary school levels, and even the whole question about teaching the issue of when a child gets their period is something that typically is not taught in elementary school. We were doing some research trying to find out whether or not there was any protest around this. And any parents said, you've been teaching this to my child, you can't do this. We haven't found that to be the case. It might be the case, but we haven't seen any reporting that there was an outcry that this kind of thing was being taught. So not quite sure where it's coming from, but it seems to be a line of thinking that's going on down in Florida right now, Hallie.
Rahema Ellis, thank you very much. That brings us to tonight's Newsmaker segment, where we go one-on-one with the people making headlines on the issues we're all talking about. And tonight, yes, it is education, because schools are dealing with a lot right now. Bills, like the one we just talked about, other bills that ban what you can say in school, what books kids can read, the potential for big teacher strikes. Lots of former students wondering, am I going to have to pay back my student loans? What's up with that? Let's bring in somebody who knows a lot about all of this, and that is Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. Secretary Cardona, thank you for being on the show.
Glad to be with you.
I think your first time on this particular show.
Yes,
it's nice to have
yeah.
you. Let me start with where my colleague Rahema Ellis left off there. We don't have to talk about this specific bill on period discussions in schools, but more broadly, these kinds of bills that we're seeing in many places in the country that limit what students and teachers can and cannot talk about in schools. Broadly, how do you keep teachers working in schools when there's these kinds of restrictions being placed on them? And do you see some of the parents' perspective on why they would want these bills to move forward?
Look, you know, it's ironic that it's coming from places that preach small government, yet there's government overreach here and censorship. It's concerning. It's very concerning. I think, you know, we have to make sure our parents' voices are being heard here. I've spoken to educators in my visits across the country, and they're concerned. They're scared. They're limited in what they can do. But I think it's a symptom of the lack of respect that our educators in our schools have from some politicians who are trying to make partisan politics part of their education agenda.
You are looking to make that political point, I think, today, because you have a new op-ed out in the Tampa Bay Times. Tampa Bay, of course, in the state of Florida, let's note, where you say, and I'm quoting here, they want to ban kids from learning the truth when it doesn't align with their political agenda. I have to think that by they, you mean people like Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who, as you well know, is tiptoeing towards this 2024 run. You've criticized him before. He may very well be the person who is running against President Biden, the guy who appointed you to this position.
Not only in Florida, in states across the country, we have an attack on public schools. In my opinion, it's intended to disrupt public schools so that the private voucher option sounds better. We have to understand our public schools are under attack. The profession is under attack. However, we have a plan for that. We have a plan to raise the bar. We're focusing on making sure our students have the mental health supports that they need. We're talking about career pathways in our high schools that connect our students to the two-year schools and the tsunami of jobs that are coming. We have a positive agenda. Look at the budget. You know, we're not going to let that distract us from what we're focusing on. Right now, we're focusing on what students and families tell us they need. They need opportunities for their kids, and that's what we're focusing on.
In some instances, though, Democrats have misread in some ways what parents are looking for from school districts. I think of what happened just across the river from where we're sitting here in Virginia that got Glenn Youngkin to the governorship instead of Terry McAuliffe. Do you think that Democrats have in some ways course-corrected enough that that may not be an issue come 24?
You know, from day one, we've been focused on listening to parent voices, and not in some shiny package that doesn't really have substance. We've listened to over 9,000 parents. We've strengthened, through the American Rescue Plan, parent engagement processes throughout the country to give parents authentic voice and make sure that they're the leading partner for our schools. So we don't buy into that narrative. We know parents are the first and most influential teachers, and we've been partnering with parents and encouraging states to reimagine how they engage families. Parents need to have a voice, especially having seen what happened with the pandemic and how they impacted the students.
So you're bringing me to my next question on what we covered 24 hours ago here on this show, which was this big rally out in L.A. ahead of what we now know will be a teachers' strike there, unless there can be some kind of an agreement in the next couple of weeks here. The superintendent says all the schools are going to close if this strike actually does happen. What is your message to parents who are looking at the learning loss from the pandemic that is real and serious? 420,000 students in the country's second biggest district who are going, man, my kid's going to be out of school, you know, again. Setting aside however you feel about the strike and the issues there, it's the kids and their learning loss, I think, that some parents are worried about.
Sure. So, look, we've been in contact with both sides, and we're hopeful that there's going to be a resolution before Tuesday. And we know when students are not in school, when educators are not in school, students suffer. So we're hopeful that there's a resolution. We recognize the impact of not being in school. So I'm hopeful that there's going to be a resolution before Tuesday. At the end of the day, the students are the ones hurting the most.
What is it going to look like, that resolution?
Whatever it is, our students are in the classrooms and our educators are in the classroom. That's what the goal is.
Will the teachers end up having more money as they've asked for?
Well, I don't want to speak to the different sides. I know we're in contact. But I think both parties know our students need more now, not less.
Let me ask you about something that is of interest to, I think, a lot of people who watch this show and who are sort of generally tuning into what's going on as it relates to education on the national level, and that is, what's up with my student loans?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge question for people.
Question of the day.
Well, the president himself says he's not super confident that the Supreme Court is going to find in favor of the administration and give the green light to this plan. So what's your answer to that if it doesn't come through, to the 26 million people who are waiting for some kind of a relief?
26, there's 43 million people that could benefit from this. And we know these are people that are trying to get back on their feet after the pandemic. Just like we did targeted debt relief for businesses, we feel confident that not only we have the authority, but it's needed. And when I talk to folks, they tell me they need this help.
But that's not what the Supreme Court's decided on.
Right. So we're confident in our case moving forward. But I want to point you to the work that we've done outside of this, too. We've provided over $55 billion in debt relief. We've helped over 2 million Americans. We're fixing the public service loan forgiveness program. You know, we walked into a very broken system, and we're trying to make college more affordable, more accessible. I'm proud of the work that we're doing there. I'm confident in our case, although I recognize, you know, the president mentioned that he doesn't have the most confidence. Right. Look, we put the best case forward, but we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop fighting for everyday Americans. This is targeted. 90% of the dollars are going to people making less than $75,000 a year.
But it sounds like you're splitting from the president on this. Sounds like you're more confident that he is that this is going to go your way.
I'm confident we put the best case forward and that we're never going to stop fighting for regular Americans who are trying to get to school and make ends meet at home.
I'm being told I'm out of time, but I have to ask you about my favorite topic.
Yes.
That I'm so interested, the U.S. News and World Report rankings.
Yes.
More and more colleges are dropping on it.
Yeah.
Dropping out of it. They don't want to do it. The ranking system. Do you think that's good? How big of a deal?
I favor inclusivity and social mobility. Show me how you can do that for your community. That's how you should be ranked highly.
So you like that these colleges are getting out of that game?
Look, we should be valuing universities based on how they're helping economic mobility, how they're being inclusive, not exclusive.
Secretary Cardona, thank you for being on the show, our newsmaker tonight. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, some big protests in France over how old you should be when you get to retire. We're going to show you exactly what's going down in Paris coming up. Plus, another train derailment, this time in Arizona. What's all that sticky stuff? Ugh, we'll tell you about it in a second. Take a look at some of these rather dramatic scenes in France right now where people are in the streets. They are upset over the French leader's push to raise the retirement age up 2 years. It is a big fight on the streets and in Parliament, with the potential for the Prime Minister and the cabinet to get thrown out after this moment. Look at this. The left-leaning members of the French version of the House of Representatives trying to drown out the Prime Minister to stop her from pushing this retirement plan change forward. Listen. They were singing the anthem so loud that nobody could speak. The scene we just showed you got Mr. Macron, Emmanuel Macron and his government worried they would never get a vote in, let alone get a vote passed. So he used a special constitutional power to just do it anyway and bypass the assembly. That has enraged hundreds of thousands of people out demonstrating. You're looking at more of those protests from tonight. And the country's garbage workers, they're going on strike over this, leading to all this garbage along those usually, you know, lovely-looking Parisian streets. NBC's Molly Hunter is in Paris, where this is all going down.
Yeah, Hallie, and you have just laid out the very dramatic, surprising last few hours in this country. But to be very clear, it's not surprising that French President Emmanuel Macron had wanted to get this done. This is something he's been talking about since his first term. Remember, he's a finance guy. He is a technocrat. He crunched the numbers, and he has basically said that mathematically, France could not support future generations without moving the retirement age from 62 to 64. The problem for Macron in his second term is that he didn't have the political support. He also didn't have the public's support. support. So according to recent polls, Hallie, and this number is huge, 70% of people across the country not only oppose this bill, but also supported national strikes. This country has had 8 consecutive national strikes, and we are now seeing protests and strikes. Hallie, you can actually hear right now the protests at La Place de la Concorde. Thousands of people are protesting tonight, and in cities across the country, every major city tonight, there are protests, there are strikes. Public transportation is shut down. The police are striking. At gas stations, there are long lines. There is a low supply of gasoline. Schools are striking. Trains across the country will start to be canceled more frequently. We will see interruptions in flights. But I will bring you back a little bit technically as far as what exactly happened today when when Prime Minister Elizabeth Warren triggered this constitutional tool. It's called Article 49.3. And basically, the government set it in motion this afternoon after French President Emmanuel Macron decided, and once his party knew that he did not have the support, now what happens is that opposition lawmakers have 24 hours to file a no-confidence motion. Hallie, this is an incredibly rare vote in France. It's unlikely to pass, but 1/10 of lawmakers must voice support to force a floor vote. Then there will be a floor vote on this no-confidence motion if it gets that support. And if the motion passes by absolute majority, the Prime Minister, the cabinet are removed, the retirement bill is struck down. Basically, you will see the fall of Emmanuel Macron's government. Or if the no confidence motion fails, the bill then stands. What happens then, though, is that protests will continue. Hallie, we just heard from the unions tonight, and they plan to keep striking tomorrow. And that means, of course, thousands and thousands of people will be striking without pay. But what happens, of course, for the average French person, whether they are protesting or striking, Hallie, is that it really brings this country to a grinding halt. Hallie?
No kidding. Molly Hunter, our thanks to her for that report from Paris. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Southwest Bureau, a train carrying corn syrup derailed in Arizona. That's what all that sticky stuff is. At first, officials thought maybe it was some sort of hazardous material. Luckily, it turns out that was not the case. Nobody's been hurt. The cause of the crash is under investigation. From our Western Bureau, check out the drone footage from Orange County, California. It looks like half of a deck fallen off a cliff. We've been talking about those really bad storms and all that rain creating landslides. You've seen dozens of apartment buildings and homes evacuated. So far, luckily, no reports of any injuries. From our Northeast Bureau, a seal found in a snowstorm in Maine earlier this year is back in the ocean today, returned today with a buddy. The Marine Mammals of Maine group says that these two seals bonded in rehab, were trained for life in the wild, and then released together. I smell a future Disney movie coming to a theater near you pretty soon. That's very cool. Still to come. Words like gaslighting or narcissism or depression. You've probably used these words before or seen them used, but are they being used correctly? Well, people often get wrong about some mental health and psychology terms. Coming up next in The Original, and more on why it matters. To tonight's Original now, with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And depending on how online you are, you've probably seen posts using words in the mental health community, words like gaslighting or trauma. But one recent study looked at about 500 TikTok videos and found that the vast majority of them, 84%, that gave mental health advice was misleading. Experts say using some of these words incorrectly can lead to some problems, even if that is not the intention. Here's NBC's Savannah Sellers.
They're words you've probably heard in posts on your social media feeds. Powerful words some call therapy language, like narcissism or depression, sparking conversations. But experts are concerned some of these posts aren't using these terms correctly.
What are some of the top words you see people using incorrectly when it comes to mental health and psychology?
The top words I would probably say are, of course, gaslighting, but narcissist.
Henry Tournier, a licensed professional counselor, a.k.a. Henry, the Black therapist on TikTok, joined the platform to help set the record straight, explaining the precise definition of these misused terms.
I hope this clarifies a little bit about narcissism, and hopefully we stop misusing that word, because as we use it incorrectly over and over, it starts to lose its meaning.
Take gaslighting. It's defined by the American Psychological Association as, in part, to manipulate another person into doubting his or her perceptions. Or narcissism, excessive self-love or egocentrism. Or depression, extreme sadness or despair that lasts more than days, interfering with daily life. Child and family psychologist Jen Hartstein says misusing these words can create bigger problems.
So we're perpetuating a lot of mental health stigma, which might prevent people from getting help when they really need it.
She's seeing the effects of these, at times, misguided conversations in her patients.
Getting a lot of self-diagnosing of, oh, I listened to this person and they said these symptoms and therefore I have this disorder, which is often incorrect because they're not licensed clinicians.
Researchers say knowing how to express feelings more accurately, especially at a young age, can boost emotional intelligence and help avoid this problem. The Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence developed a program for schools to help both students and adults better understand feelings.
So what's the difference between anxiety and stress and pressure and fear and overwhelm? And what we find is that people just don't know the differences. And so what that means is that we are using words to describe our experiences that might not accurately describe our experiences.
Their program, called Ruler, teaches 5 skills for improving emotional intelligence: recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions.
What we argue is that emotional intelligence, in collaboration with general cognitive ability, produces the best outcomes.
And he says using language accurately is a key tool to achieving that better outcome.
When you have language to describe your inner experiences, right, you can communicate better, you can get your needs met, and importantly, you can develop the strategies that work best to help you deal with your feelings.
And whether it's in school or on social media, having access to the right resources is critical. Henry's hoping to do his part.
My mission is to just spread awareness and correct information, and to just encourage people to really look at mental health as not just this trend or this gimmick, but as something that is really impactful and is a true science in the world.
Savannah Sellers is joining us now. Savannah, I'm so glad you're with us, especially today, which we'll talk about in a second. What should people do, though, on the story that you just reported out about words like these? Because a lot of people use them, right, and use them with sort of the best of intentions. But as you point out, that has sometimes some consequences.
Absolutely. So there's a couple things going on here. The first is really, investigate yourself, and also if you're talking about someone else, what's actually happening in the relationship there or with yourself. Because, look, you shouldn't just be throwing these out there unless, you mean it, or maybe you think there's something deeper going on. And that's an important note for parents, too. If you're hearing this from your children, if you're seeing it online, kind of asking them and legitimizing the conversation around mental health, not just saying that can't be what's going on or that's not right, but really trying to investigate deeper what's going on. And then, of course, this conversation can't be had without pointing out the fact that there is a rise in mental health challenges going on with young people. So take people seriously when they are saying things like this. Just make sure you're getting the help from the right places and not, just using TikTok or online as your only resource for mental health information.
Savannah Sellers, thank you so much. The reason why we are so glad to talk with Savannah today is because of what's happening tonight right here on NBC News Now, 10:30 Eastern. Savannah's special report, Teens Under Pressure, Mental Health and Social Media. Do not miss it, and do not miss her Teen Vogue op-ed where she opens up about her own life and her own journey sort of with and around mental health. Our thanks to Savannah to that. Our thanks to you for watching. More coverage picks up right now. We're coming on the air tonight with a big rescue push for First Republic Bank. 11 of the country's biggest banks now stepping in with billions of dollars to help stop another possible bank collapse. It's got the markets feeling good. Lawmakers, well, we're going to bring you the latest from Capitol Hill. Plus, we go to an elementary school that's right next to a plant that the EPA says is releasing toxic, cancer-causing chemicals. So the question is, why is it still there? Some answers coming in a brand new investigation. And 3 years since the COVID shutdown, but there's still a lot we don't know about long COVID. We're talking with one woman who's still dealing with it, worried it could change her life forever. Plus, the University of Alabama, spoiler alert, they just won their first round in March Madness, but there is still a shadow over the team. We'll tell you why the Crimson Tide's biggest star needed armed security before tip-off. Then, if you are a fan of Taylor Swift, get ready to consume some new Swiftiness. She is dropping new music tonight, a day before the start of her very highly anticipated new tour. We'll tell you what else we know coming up. Hey, I'm Hallie, and tonight we are hearing from the Pentagon not too long ago saying they don't want an apology from Russia after its plane intercepted a U.S. drone over the Black Sea. Instead, they just want to support Ukraine in its fight. They say they're committed to keeping U.S. planes in international airspace. They say some newly declassified video proves Russia is wrong when it denies it had anything to do with the collision between one of its planes. You're looking at what the Pentagon frames as kind of the receipt here. So take a look at this. If they're going to show it again, they're going to cue it up here. It's this plane coming in, dropping something. The Pentagon says that something is gas, fuel, basically. The Pentagon says that then that plane clips the drone's propeller. This footage, they say, was edited before release. Watch.
Our words and our actions speak for themselves, and similarly, Russia's inaccurate information, false information, obfuscation, grasping at straws, changing narratives also speaks for itself. So we're going to stay focused on the facts, and we're going to stay focused on our mission.
Keep in mind that the Kremlin has denied that its planes came into contact with the drone, blamed the U.S. instead. Since the video has come out, no update from them. But the U.S. Air Force in Europe is putting out this map today showing approximately where this happened, right? The rough location here in the Black Sea off the coast of Ukraine. The concern now is what this means moving forward for the tensions between the U.S. and Russia. We know that Washington has called this move dangerous and reckless. Let me bring in now Courtney Kuby, who is live for us at the Pentagon. Courtney, what's interesting here is the lack of response from Russia. I'm not saying that's how it's going to remain for the next 24 hours, but I think that response, and I know from talking to you that you might think this too, might tell us a lot about where this goes next, right?
Yeah, exactly. So initially when this all happened 2 days ago, the Russians did respond. They denied that there was any kind of a collision. They denied that there was aggressive behavior. In fact, they said that the U.S. drone was flying without a transponder, which they claimed was a violation of international law, and that it eventually was just losing altitude and crashed on its own through no fault of the Russian military. So that was the last we've heard of them. We haven't heard any new scenarios, including since the U.S. put this video out earlier today. And the U.S. did this with the hope that it would prove their side of the narrative, that the Russian aircrafts or pilots were operating in an unsafe manner, weaving around. They dropped the fuel, as you mentioned. We can see in that video, which looks like a vapor sort of just because of the altitude. And that, of course, there was this collision. So we're waiting to hear if the Russians have their own video that they can release or if they have any other version of their narrative as well.
Courtney Kuby, thank you very much. Live for us from the Pentagon with all that. Much more to watch, Court, I am sure. Appreciate it. So let's talk about what's going on Wall Street with markets a little more optimistic tonight after this big rescue. Right? Big banks riding to the rescue of First Republic Bank. And that's partly why the Dow, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ are all closing in the green after a rough couple of days. 11 of those big banks announced they're going to put like $30 billion into First Republic. After that stock has been on a roller coaster ride the past couple of days, all this financial drama stemming from this question of could more banks collapse? All the uncertainty is setting up a dramatic day on Capitol Hill as well, with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen telling lawmakers to basically keep calm and carry on. Banks have been taking billions of dollars in short-term loans from the Federal Reserve this week, using the tools that the Fed rolled out over the weekend. We're going to get to more on that with our own Garrett Haake, who's live on Capitol Hill in a second. But first, I want to get to our own Monica Alba, who is live for us at the White House on a story that relates to the administration's push more broadly to TikTok, Monica, the way that the White House is ramping up pressure there on this administrative front to basically shore up privacy concerns. Also big for lawmakers over on Capitol Hill who are very worried, right, about the idea, as we look at the nexus of things on the Hill and the White House, really worried about the idea that TikTok's owned by a Chinese company. What does it mean for the 100 million people who use TikTok in this country?
That's absolutely right, Hallie. And to continue that theme of where the Hill and White House meet, the TikTok CEO is going to be testifying before Capitol Hill next week. So that's something everybody's watching to see how they're going to approach that. But we already have a good sense from the company's response to this news that we were able to confirm earlier today, which is that likely right now the Biden administration is saying if TikTok doesn't sell, if ByteDance, the company that owns it, doesn't divest that, then there could be perhaps a nationwide ban on the app. But we're talking about 100 million Americans who use this every single day. It's only getting more popular. So how would that really work? Those are the questions we don't really have answers to right now. But the White House is saying specifically that when it comes to national security concerns, which is related to the privacy and data of all of these Americans, they're going to take that matter very seriously. So there is an ongoing review that really has been in the works for months, as the White House now is saying we're not going to comment on this new report about this potential ban. They say they want to let that review play out. But we do know that the president has been under pressure recently from Republicans to do more when it comes to protecting the privacy of data, when it comes specifically to TikTok. So this is a more aggressive stance from the White House, but it's one that is not locked in. Nothing is final here. And it could take weeks or months for any of this to really be decided, Hallie.
Our team was struck by something that the head of the National Security Agency had to say about how much of a concern TikTok is. Listen.
Certainly, one third of Americans get their news from TikTok every single day. 1/6 of American youth say they're constantly on TikTok. That's a loaded gun.
A loaded gun, Mon. I mean, you don't hear that kind of language that often about stuff like this. What is also so striking, though, is how many people, and you hear it there, how many people use TikTok, specifically like under the age, I'm just saying, I'm making this, I don't know what to say, younger people, the youths, which I always feel so old saying, but like so many young people get their news off of it. There is a natural constituency for TikTok in this country, even if there's not a natural constituency that's pro-TikTok on the Hill.
Exactly. And that is why we've been talking about this for so long. And remember, former President Trump actually tried to do this, something similar, tried to ban TikTok, and it didn't work. It got tied up in a ton of legal challenges. And so, again, that's likely something that this would face if ultimately the Biden administration does this. But before we get to that, Hallie, the point is there would have to be some bipartisan push here for legislation that could perhaps give the White House the tools to go after some of these social media platforms, specifically in this case, of course, TikTok, to try to do this. But again, then we have seen this sort of work as an example as the U.S. has banned TikTok from government-owned devices. But in terms of really wiping it from all American cell phones and platforms, that's far more complicated in terms of how it would actually work. And so before we get to that point, the White House needs to kind of answer that. But a ton of people would be really concerned because, as you say, the youngs love this thing. And I know you like this thing too, Hal. I know you love it.
Straight up. I mean, that's the thing. It is, yes,
It's
many
entertaining,
hours more on that discussion. That's
Absolutely.
for sure. There's a lot wrapped up in this. Monica, thanks much. I'm sure we'll talk again at that big hearing next week when the head of TikTok comes to the Hill. Speaking of the Hill, it's where we find Garrett Haake. Lawmakers have a lot on their plate, Garrett, right? There's sometimes we talk about what's going on the Hill, and it's like so slow, we don't know, whatever. There's a bunch happening. Not just this TikTok issue we talked with Monica about, but also the economy writ large, Garrett. We heard from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen trying to reassure folks, lawmakers, and also the rest of us, we're okay. Like, don't freak out. Things are sound, as she put it.
Oh, I thought we were going to hear some of her saying that, Hallie. Yeah, look, I mean,
you
the
heard
secretary.
me saying it. That's what you got,
Yeah,
friend.
that's all right. Your Secretary Yellen impression was fantastic. Look, so the secretary was on the Hill today, originally to talk about the president's budget. This was a pre-existing hearing already scheduled, Senate Finance Committee, not even the committee that oversees banks, but this issue with the SVB failing, with this perception of overall weakness in the banking sector of the economy, really dominated this hearing today. And you saw a lot of significant divisions, both between Democrats and Republicans, and even among members of the same party about what to do about this. Now, throughout the course of the day, we saw some news that made some of the members of both parties feel a little bit better. This other bank, First Republic, getting $30 billion from other banks is exactly the kind of private sector response that Republicans like to see in a situation like this. But during the hearing today, Republicans really hammered Yellen on the idea that this SVB bank failure might have been linked to inflation driven by the Joe Biden spending economy. Here's some of what we heard from Republicans in this hearing.
Bank failures this past week highlighted how fragile our economy is given rising interest rates and decades-long inflation.
Some have suggested that this was an example of mismanagement at a time of higher interest rates and higher inflation. Others are saying, where are the regulators? Were they asleep at the wheel?
Yellen's message and really her mission was to push back here on that idea that the economy is somehow fragile because of this. She pushed back as much as she could on the idea that the sector of banking and the economy much more broadly is stronger than it appears. But the possibility of regulatory mismanagement did seem to be the one thing that the parties were willing to agree on here, that the folks who should have been paying closer attention to this issue, kind of in the various layers of the federal government, may have been asleep at the switch.
Let me ask you about this sort of rescue, as it's being called, the Wall Street rescue of First Republic here, because I know there's been some reaction. I'm thinking of, not to get in the weeds, but Patrick McHenry, let's say a top Republican in the House sort of reacting to this. What is the reaction from lawmakers? Because this is very specifically not the government coming to the rescue of First Republic. It is private companies. It's these banks coming to the rescue of First Republic.
Well, and again, at the risk of getting too deep into the woods, it was bank money that is backstopping the deposits at SVB, right? The money that's in the FDIC accounts, the money that's being used to protect deposits, is money that is raised by the government from fees that banks pay. And I think what you're looking at here is a situation where these banks, and I'm not a banking correspondent, most of what I deal with at a bank is going to the ATM machine, but the way I look at this is these banks looked at this and said, one of two things is going to happen. This bank could fail, and we could be forced to step in, either by raising fees on our customers or having to fork over cash or be kind of shotgun married to this bank to rescue it like we saw during the financial crisis of 2008. Or if it's going to be our money anyway, we could spend it on the front end and maybe try to make some money in it by taking a minority investment in First Republic. That's what happened here today. And again, if you're a free market person, if you're a Republican like a Patrick McHenry, who chairs the Financial Services Committee in the House, you'd much rather see the banks decide to do this on their own than be told to do it later by the federal government when you're already in crisis.
Garrett Haake reporting all that out for us. Welcome back, friend, by the way. Things are sounding great. Good to see you. Appreciate it. Listen, I want to show you some new video that we are just getting in, and it may have something to do with the special counsel investigating those classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago, the former president's home. Take a look. This is Margot Martin. She's a very close Donald Trump aide. That's her in the black there, leaving the D.C. courthouse where that investigation is unfolding. It is looped. She didn't walk out twice. She doesn't have a twin. It is a looped piece of video. We still don't know why she was there, right? We cannot confirm why she was there, but it does raise the question of whether she might be cooperating with that case. We're also getting a new look today inside a different investigation. So there's that investigation into Donald Trump and then an investigation in Georgia looking into his push to overturn the 2020 election results. And maybe a few new tea leaves that Donald Trump, who again is now a presidential candidate again, could potentially face some legal heat. The Georgia grand jury's foreperson, you may remember her from our interviews back in February, she's now telling NBC News about another call that apparently prosecutors felt the jurors needed to hear. It happened in December 2020, as Mr. Trump and his campaign were pushing hard to try to tank the legitimate results of the election. He had rather infamously called the Secretary of State to tell him, find the votes. But there was another call, too, with somebody else on the other end of the line, the Republican Speaker of the Georgia House. Mr. Trump pressured him, David Ralston, to call a special session meant to somehow overturn how Georgia voted in favor of Joe Biden. Over the course of this 10-minute conversation with Mr. Trump, Ralston was apparently not all that into this. Like after the president asked who could possibly stop him from doing this, Ralston said, I'm quoting, a federal judge, that's who. Okay, so what now? Now it is up to Fulton County's district attorney to pursue or to not pursue an indictment. That is the question here. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard joins us now. And Vaughn, let me start with sort of the different pieces we're putting together here. There are 3 different investigations into Donald Trump right now, right? One of them has to do with classified documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago. Explain why it's interesting that Margot Martin was seen walking out of that courthouse in Washington today.
Right. This is the investigation here, particularly pertaining to the national security records that were found at Mar-a-Lago. There were more than 100 classified documents that were retrieved by the FBI when they entered the premise here of Mar-a-Lago last August. And there were a number of aides that left the White House and came to Mar-a-Lago post-presidency with Donald Trump. And the question here is the special counsel, Jack Smith, looks at this case is the extent to which Donald Trump was aware of these particular documents or others were aware of these documents and why. And so Margot Martin arguably is one of his closest aides, who has remained here in West Palm, or I should say in Palm Beach, Florida, alongside the former president. And we don't know exactly what she was doing at the courthouse, to be clear. But the fact that she was in Washington, D.C., appearing there at the D.C. courthouse, in which Jack Smith and the special counsel are looking not only at the documents case, but also at alleged efforts by Donald Trump and others to overturn the 2020 election. It is notable that one of his closest aides is there here today.
So you have teed us up nicely for the next piece of this year. We love a good bucket on this show. So if bucket 1 is the special counsel investigation, right? Bucket 2 is the Georgia investigation. There was a grand jury looking into the push by former President Trump to overturn the results in that state. This grand jury met, talked for a long time. They're done meeting. Now it's up to the Fulton County District Attorney to decide I'm either going to indict Trump or I'm not going to indict Trump. This new information is coming out about this interesting call that Donald Trump had with the then Republican Speaker of the House. Why do we think prosecutors wanted the grand jury to hear that call?
And it hits also at the heart of the reality of what a grand jury is. It's a secret group of jurors who hear evidence and testimony brought forward by the prosecutor, but it's secret. And so that is why this revelation here from jurors, that this call from Donald Trump to the then Speaker of the House, pressuring him to hold a special session to try to overturn Georgia's election, is notable because it speaks to just how much we potentially are unaware of that came before the grand jury. Evidence and testimony that the public has not yet heard, but prosecutors may be looking to present at a potential trial if the likes of Donald Trump or others are brought forward by this grand jury. That is what is compelling here, is that perhaps there is even more evidence than the public was even aware of that the prosecutor feels like they have on their side against Donald Trump or others.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us there in West Palm, or just outside West Palm, Vaughn, not too far from Mar-a-Lago. Thank you. Today, we are hearing for the first time from the family of a Virginia man since his death in police custody, as 3 more people are being charged in his murder. 28-year-old Ivo Otieno died on March 6th after being arrested and physically restrained while being admitted to a hospital. His family says he has a history of mental illness. And an attorney for the family says video of the death shows him being treated in what the lawyer calls a subhuman manner. The lawyers and a county prosecutor say he was smothered by police officers as he was on the ground in handcuffs, legs shackled, and that he died from asphyxiation. His mother and brother saw video of what happened today. Here's what they said.
My son was treated like a dog, worse than a dog. I saw it with my own eyes on the video.
Horrible, horrible.
He was treated inhumanely, and it was traumatic, and it was systematic. He was murdered. They smothered the breath out of my baby.
The 3 hospital workers charged today, that's in addition to the 7 sheriff's deputies who have already been charged with second-degree murder. Those deputies will be in court Tuesday and have been put on administrative leave. Marissa Parra is covering all of this for us. So, Marissa, timeline here. Sort of walk us through it and what little we know about what was on the video, because I know, as you point out, we haven't seen it as members of the media. The only people that have seen it are the family, presumably, and the prosecutors.
Exactly. And there's multiple videos from what we're told, of course. So starting with cell phone video of March 3rd. March 3rd is apparently, allegedly, where all of this started. When all of this started, police got a call about a potential burglary. And so on March 3rd, they responded. And according to the family, according to representation for the family, they say that it wasn't a burglary, that he was in mental health distress. And that is a theme that you will see time and time again, Hallie. And so what happened was, to make a long story short, they say he was then transferred to a hospital. He then assaulted police officers, was then taken to a jail. And then what happens next was another point of contention for the family and the attorneys representing the family, because they were wondering, why was he then taken from the jail to a different hospital even further away? And so it was during the intake for that second hospital, that is when there was a scuffle. There was a point of contention between the deputies and him, and that is what he did not survive.
The family says that Otieno had a history of mental health problems. Talk about how that plays into this case here, if at all, and then separately, what we're hearing from perhaps the police union, whoever is representing these deputies or speaking on behalf of them now that they've been charged with murder.
Objectively, the mental health aspect here is huge, regardless of what side you're on here, because on one hand, you have those who are making the argument that it was because of his history with mental health that is why they needed such a large police presence. That's something that one of the lawyers for the deputies, the only one who's spoken so far to my knowledge, has said that was one of the reasons why there was such a response to him, because he was combative. On the other hand, when you listen to the family, particularly his mother, she's saying that it is because of his mental health issues that he should have been treated with extra care because he needed treatment from people who knew how to specialize in that.
Marissa Parra, thank you for being on top of this story. More developments to come, we imagine, next week for sure. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We got some breaking news to get to right now because there is a tornado watch in effect for parts of Oklahoma and Texas. We are just finding out about this. There's a bad storm moving through. Look at some of this video. Dark, ominous clouds. It looks like maybe that's a funnel forming in the middle. You've got rain and hail slamming the region. I want to bring in NBC News meteorologist Angie Lastman. Angie, these pictures are quite literally just coming into us. Walk us through what's happening.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is that same storm system, Hallie, that impacted folks on the West Coast over the past day or so. Now we're seeing it continue to track to the east, and we do have multiple severe thunderstorm warnings in effect right now. We just saw a tornado warning expire for the northwestern parts of Dallas, and we have a tornado watch that's in effect, basically extending from central Texas up into southeastern parts of Oklahoma. This is the main area that this line of thunderstorms that continues to march just to the east of and has popped up, as I said, multiple warnings, but also reports of large hail. We're talking ranging from dime size to ping pong, even reports of tennis ball size hail. Of course, wherever we see these orange boxes is where we have a developing situation of a really strong storm working through. So if you live in those areas, that's where you're going to want to make sure that you're taking cover. We also have heavy rain from this situation, so it's not just the strong storms, it's also that rain coming down, prompting what looks like we've just seen in parts of Dallas, a flood warning issued just now. This is going to be something that, again, makes it problematic, not just once this storm moves through, which is moving at about 40 miles per hour, so it'll be out of here pretty quick. But in the meantime, where you see the severe thunderstorm warnings, we're talking about the hail, the strong wind gusts, anywhere from 40 to 50, even reports up to 60 miles per hour, and continuing to move to the east. This is a situation that will be with us through at least the rest of the afternoon and into the evening hours, and extending into parts of Louisiana and Arkansas through the evening.
Angie Lastman, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Coming up here on the show, Los Angeles students may be shut out of the classroom next week. I just talked with the Secretary of Education. We'll tell you what he's doing to try to prevent a planned teachers' strike, making some news here on this show. Plus, bad news for Dunkin' lovers. Some people prone to hyperbole are calling it a tragedy, what Dunkin's about to do. Maybe let's grab a dictionary, but we'll talk about it. There's a new safety warning out about certain kinds of carbon monoxide detectors. We'll tell you why officials say that your family could end up more in danger than the 5 things. But first, one of the biggest school districts in the country is getting ready to shut down. 65,000 teachers and school workers in LA are getting ready for a 3-day strike next week unless somehow the district and these unions get to an agreement in the next 5 days. Just in the last hour here on this show, we heard from a member of President Biden's cabinet, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, who tells us, yeah, the administration is involved. They're talking with school leaders in LA and the unions about all of this. Listen.
We've been in contact with both sides, and we're hopeful that there's going to be a resolution. We know when students are not in school, when educators are not in school, students suffer. So we're hopeful that there's a resolution. I think both parties know our students need more now, not less.
About 500,000 students in LA stand to be affected by this. Right now, the Education Workers Union, those are the cafeteria workers, janitors, and other low-wage earners within the school district, are striking, and they have the Teachers Union backing them up in solidarity. So the Teachers Union says they won't be going to school as this proposed 3-day strike happens potentially next week. Right now, that's when the date is set. And they're asking for higher pay, benefits, and also more employees. Right now, they average, according to the union, about $25,000 and are looking for a 30% salary increase. This is what the superintendent had to say in response to their demands.
We have a historic offer on the table. That's a 15% increase on compensation in addition to 10% cash in hand, a dramatic increase in terms of healthcare benefits for part-time workers, and a minimum wage guarantee that exceeds the local minimum wage as well as the state.
So right now, negotiations at a standstill, but just so you can get a little bit more of an idea of the day-to-day struggles these workers face, the Education Workers Union tells us a lot of their members have to take second or third jobs just to provide for their families to live within LA, which is one of the most expensive cities in the country. On average, the rent here is more than $2,000 a month, so they say their salary as it stands won't cut it. The Workers Union tells us that unless the district is willing to budge on that salary increase, there is no deal. So the decisions that are made here in Los Angeles could have impacts across the country as many teachers' unions and districts struggle with this back and forth of the demands between the two. Back to you.
Our thanks to Nayala Charles for that reporting. Let's take you to the town of Reserve, Louisiana, where people there say the government is failing them. And now it's failing their kids, too. We've got a majority black community there that backs up to a synthetic rubber plant for decades. This plant has put out a chemical into the air that federal regulators say could be likely to cause cancer. The EPA says they warned about the dangers of it 7 years ago, but this plant is still operational, even though it sits just 450 feet from an elementary school. You see that map? Cynthia McFadden talked to people there. She is joining us now. Cynthia, we are so glad to have you on this really important reporting here. You were talking with people. I have to imagine there was a real and serious level of concern here.
Well, there really is. The two leaders of the community are two folks who are in their 80s. They grew up there. Their families, their immediate families live there as well. And what they said to me is basically this, that they send the kids every day to what they consider a gas chamber. And they say that's just not okay, that something has to happen. There's no question that these carcinogens are being emitted into the air, that the level of carcinogen emitted in the area where the kids go to school is sometimes 50 times the level that the EPA says is safe. They say enough is enough. They say because of their race, they're being sacrificed, that this is actually one of those sacrifice zones in that, you know, notorious Cancer Alley in Louisiana that goes for 85 miles, this industrial heart that, you know, we've essentially as a country made a determination that some people will be sacrificed so that these plants can be there. And they've had enough now.
What are they, when they go to governmental officials, right? What is the government side of this? What are they doing, right? Like, what's the action on this?
Well, so, I mean, we went to the EPA, and the EPA says, and the director of the EPA says, I really care about this. He went down and did a justice tour of the area. He said, I want to stand up for these people. Enough is enough. We're going to make change. But listen, the administration's been in office, what, 2 years? Nothing has changed for the people on the ground. Yes, there has been a filing in federal court. It happened while I was in Louisiana 2 weeks ago. But from the people's point of view, the air is still toxic. The kids are still going to a school that's right on the fence line with the factory. You know, from their point of view, nothing has changed.
What about the responsibility or the onus or what we're hearing from the company in that perspective, Cynthia?
The company says they have cut emissions by 85%, and yet we don't know 85% of what. That's one point. The company says that they do not believe that what they're doing is adding to the cancer risk in the region, and they go on to say that they're not breaking any laws in what they are currently doing. And they're right about that. They are not breaking any laws. But there are enforcement actions that the EPA tells us they are going to be engaging in further actions, even in the very near term, perhaps as early as tomorrow. So we're going to keep our eyes out. You know, the EPA makes a very impassioned case that they are going to do right by the people in this region. So let's keep a lookout.
Cynthia McFadden, if anybody is going to stay on top of this one, I know it's going to be you. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for bringing this to us tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Hallie.
Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the CDC is reporting a big increase in how many women are dying during or in the 6 weeks after childbirth. This is the maternal mortality rate, and there's a 40% jump between 2020 and 2021. That is horrific. Experts think the COVID virus could put more moms at risk for conditions like blood clots and preeclampsia. Number 2, University of Georgia football player Jalen Carter was given 12 months probation and a $1,000 fine today. He pleaded no contest to reckless driving and racing charges related to a crash earlier this year that killed a teammate and team staffer. He's also got to take a defensive driving course and do community service. Number 3, Sanofi is the latest drug maker to announce it's cutting insulin costs. It's going to put a $35 price cap on its most popular insulin for people who have private insurance. Both Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, just in the last couple weeks, have announced changes to their insulin prices, too. Number 4, Dunkin' Donuts is saying goodbye to the beloved Dunkachino. This is what some people are calling a tragedy, which, again, you need to know the tragedy. Like, I get it. It's a good drink. It's chocolate. It's coffee. It's like all the good things. But here's the thing. Dunkin's like, we want to find new ways to innovate, but they're also saying maybe it'll come back, hinting maybe it'll come back on the menu someday. I wouldn't worry about your Dunkachinos. Number 5, big news for Swifties. I wouldn't worry about her either, because she's dropping 4 new songs at midnight tonight before her Eras tour. You know, that very, very highly anticipated tour that basically broke Ticketmaster, almost broke the internet. Starts tomorrow. The songs will come out tonight. 2 brand new songs and 2 Taylor's versions of songs that are already out. Thrilling for the Taylor Swift fans. When we come back, millions of people have had COVID, but for some people, it goes beyond just being sick for a little while. You're going to hear from one woman still dealing with it 3 years after she was first diagnosed. Coming up in the Global, the new warning from the UN nuclear watchdog about a radiological risk. But first, this week marks 3 years since the world started to shut down to try to stop the spread of COVID. And now there have been more than 100 million COVID cases in this country. A lot of people, some people at least, have experienced health problems that go way beyond their initial infection, a condition that's being called long COVID. And listen, let's be honest here. There is a lot that researchers still do not know about long COVID. There's a lot of symptoms involved here, kind of a wide range, and it seems to hit different people in different ways. About a year ago, our senior medical correspondent, Dr. John Torres, talked with one long COVID patient, and now he's following up with her to see how it's affected her life.
3 years ago, Shamir Smith got sick, and she still hasn't gotten better.
The body pain, the eye issues that won't let up for me, and the memory loss can be quite challenging.
She was diagnosed with long COVID, a name for a collection of health-related problems some people experience after a COVID infection. The numbers can vary, but a recent survey found about 15% of adults in the U.S. have experienced long COVID symptoms.
Long COVID can mean a lot of different things to different people. Most commonly, you'll hear people with long COVID talk about fatigue and energy issues, sleep disturbance, and some people have prolonged breathing trouble as well.
Dr. Jeff Siegelman knows what it's like to live with long COVID because he's suffering from it too.
In August of 2020, I was working in the emergency department. I woke up one morning with a fever and a headache. Now, 2.5 years later, I'm still on a pile of pills. I still can't taste my dinner or a glass of wine.
A recent study found fatigue was the most common long COVID symptom, followed by loss of smell, brain fog, and shortness of breath. Many with long COVID have had to take time away from work. When we spoke with Smith last year, she was on a pause from teaching.
I kept saying, hey, I'll be back in August of 2020. Then it became, I'll be back in January of 2021.
And now?
I actually just was approved for disability retirement from the school system here in Baltimore.
How important was teaching to you?
Teaching was the thing that I felt like I did the best. I went from a black poor girl growing up in Southeast DC to one of the best teachers in Baltimore City. I wouldn't have had it any other way. And because of a stupid virus, I spend most of my time on a couch.
Now, 3 years into the pandemic, we're learning more and more about long COVID.
What causes it seems to be some ongoing abnormalities in the body caused by the virus. There's probably some element of immune problems. There has been evidence of the virus itself persisting. Whether that causes the symptoms, we're not sure yet. And there are all kinds of other hypotheses.
And there's still a lot we don't know.
We don't exactly know how common it is. We don't exactly know who's at most risk of getting long COVID, and we don't yet know the right treatments or even how to prevent it.
Researchers like Dr. Leora Horowitz are looking to answer those questions in studies across the country as part of the National Institutes of Health Recover Initiative. With regulations lifted and emergency declarations set to end in May, it can feel like COVID-19 is over, but those with long COVID are grappling with a new painful reality.
I'm getting married in June, and I'm worried about how am I going to hide these rashes that came up about a year ago and they won't leave.
Dr. John Torres is joining us now. Dr. John, what is it, right? I mean, here we are 3 years in. You hear her story, you hear other stories. Why is it so hard to study long COVID? What makes it so difficult?
And Hallie, if you go back 3 years and you remember, because we were all here reporting on this the whole time, is we started hearing stories of people having these symptoms 6 months, 8 months, even a year later. And it just started kind of the ball rolling, and people scratched their heads a lot saying, we don't know what this means. And after accumulating enough data, we figured out, okay, there is a long COVID component to this, but we don't quite understand it. So we're already, a year and a half, 2 years into the pandemic when we first start even paying attention to it. And then we start saying, okay, we need to study this, but long COVID has so many symptoms and each person's symptoms are so variable, it's hard to study. Even if you look at groups, men tend to have more cardiac kidney type issues. Women tend to have more musculoskeletal type issues. And so it's really hard to get a good finger on this. And it's really hard to define what exactly long COVID is. And until we do that, we really can't study it in depth, Hallie.
Super quick, Dr. John, just because you sometimes hear things like, okay, maybe Omicron doesn't give you long COVID quite as much as the initial strains did, or maybe if you take Paxlovid, that'll help you not have long COVID. Is any of that stuff true?
That stuff could be true. We know Omicron's not as conditional for long COVID, doesn't cause as much long COVID. Paxlovid can certainly help. One of the things we're finding out is that if you have more severe illness, you're more likely to have it. Doesn't mean you won't get it if you don't have severe. On top of that, if you're vaccinated, you're less likely to have it as well. So you still need to get that vaccine, Hallie.
And those boosters. Dr. John Torres, thank you very much. Coming up here on the show, 6 months later, there are still so many protests, so much outrage in Iran after the death of a 22-year-old. How protesters are hoping that anger could lead to real change. Plus, the Women's World Cup prize money is getting a big boost, but there's a pretty big but. That's coming up in the local. But with one. Today marks 6 months since the start of some big national protests in Iran, all of it sparked by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who, remember, was taken into custody by Iran's so-called morality police for allegedly violating the country's hijab laws. Amini's death sparked outrage. It triggered major protests in the country, with tens of thousands demonstrating. And it started a movement against the government, unlike anything we've seen there in recent memory. Nearly 20,000 protesters have been arrested in Iran so far. More than 500 have been killed. And tensions are still running pretty high. I want to bring in Hallie Ruzi, who's been following the story really since the start. We thought it was important to bring it back, Hallie, because this is a dramatic moment for Iran that has now lasted for months. And the question is it going to lead to real change? I know that's an impossible question for you to answer, but help us understand the context now, 6 months later.
Hey, Hallie. Well, look, I mean, it hasn't led to the overhaul of the system that so many people in Iran wanted, so many people who were protesting on the streets or chanting anti-government slogans from their apartments. But there has been a fundamental shift in Iran, a huge cultural change. As you know, Hallie, the hijab has been a cornerstone of the Islamic Republic for over 4 decades now. It's been ruthlessly enforced. And now so many women in Iran are just simply refusing to wear it despite the costs of not wearing it, the punishment from the regime. You walk around Tehran and most young women just refuse to wear it, and it's still illegal not to wear a hijab. And their authorities are scrambling. They don't know what to do. It's too high a cost to bring out the IRGC onto the street again to start beating up and killing young women. So what are they doing now? They're surveying them with surveillance cameras. When they see women not wearing a hijab, they'll fine them, they'll block their mobile phone, they'll cut their internet access, but that still hasn't put them off. They still keep going out and they still keep saying, we want our fundamental rights. What was really fascinating for me, Hallie, today was a very prominent female 28-year-old activist was let out of jail after 4 years and 7 months. As soon as she came out, she posted a video on social media supporting the protests and denouncing the supreme leader. On her way home from jail, the authorities grabbed her and took her back to jail. On her video, she was just showing incredible courage.
That's incredible to hear about. And I wonder how much, the protests were so big, they died down a bit. Is there a chance they flare up again? What does that look like? There's so much of this, we were just looking at some of that video, is being driven by people who are younger in this country.
That's it. I mean, this is Generation Z and up until 35 years old, and they want a change in Iran. But look, the cost is very high, Hallie. I mean, just today, Amnesty International published a really horrifying report detailing, torture and violence against youths in Iran. They detailed beatings, flogging, electrocution, rape, and other sexual violence against kids as young as 12 years old. And this is all designed to frighten them from going back onto the streets. But the burning question in Iran amongst so many people is, when is this going to flare up again? Because this situation is untenable. And there's a collective sense of melancholy in the country as well.
How about that UN investigation that the EU is calling for into the poisoning of thousands of Iranian schoolgirls? Where does that stand as far as sort of the mystery of who's behind it and where that goes?
Again, another mystery. They haven't really named anybody they've arrested. The European Union has asked the UN to launch an independent investigation. But in a country that's so closely monitored, that everybody is under such scrutiny, how could you not know who did this?
Hallie Arouzi live for us on all of that. Hallie, thank you very much for the reporting there. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day. And because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our foreign desk has done it for you. Here are some of what they're keeping an eye on in a new segment we call The Global. In Libya, there are new security and safety fears because something like 2.5 tons of natural uranium have gone missing, according to the UN nuclear watchdog. That's a lot, and it can't be used right away, this missing stuff, for things like energy production or bomb fuel, but it could be refined by a group with the right tech or resources. That's why they want to find it. In Italy, the country's highest court has ordered a retrial for 2 Americans convicted of killing an Italian police officer during a sting operation gone bad. It happened back in 2019 when the 2 men were teens and on vacation in Rome. The court will announce its reasons for the verdict at some point soon and tell an appeals court what issues to look at in a new trial. In Rwanda, FIFA's president says the Women's World Cup prize money is going up a lot this year, $150 million in all. It's like a 300% increase from the last time. The money covers things like paying players and team prep and money for clubs. Still, and we have to point this out, it is nowhere close to what the men get when they win. $440 million in prize money for them in the World Cup in Qatar last year. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. Depending on how online you are, chances are you've seen posts using words in the mental health community like gaslighting or trauma. One study looked at about 500 TikTok videos and found that more than 80% of them, 84%, had misleading health advice. Experts say using these words inaccurately can lead to some problems, even if that is not the intention. NBC's Savannah Sellers has the story.
They're words you've probably heard in posts on your social media feeds. Powerful words some call therapy language, like narcissism or depression, sparking conversations. But experts are concerned some of these posts aren't using these terms correctly.
What are some of the top words you see people using incorrectly when it comes to mental health and psychology?
The top words I would probably say are, of course, gaslighting, but narcissist.
Henry Tournier, a licensed professional counselor, a.k.a. Henry, the Black therapist on TikTok, joined the platform to help set the record straight, explaining the precise definition of these misused terms.
I hope this clarifies a little bit about narcissism, and hopefully we stop misusing that word, because as we use it incorrectly over and over, it starts to lose its meaning.
Take gaslighting. It's defined by the American Psychological Association as, in part, to manipulate another person into doubting his or her perceptions. Or narcissism, excessive self-love or egocentrism. Or depression, extreme sadness or despair that lasts more than days, interfering with daily life. Child and family psychologist Jen Hartstein says misusing these words can create bigger problems.
So we're perpetuating a lot of mental health stigma, which might prevent people from getting help when they really need it.
She's seeing the effects of these, at times, misguided conversations in her patients.
Getting a lot of self-diagnosing of, oh, I listened to this person and they said these symptoms and therefore I have this disorder, which is often incorrect because they're not licensed clinicians.
Researchers say knowing how to express feelings more accurately, especially at a young age, can boost emotional intelligence and help avoid this problem. The Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence developed a program for schools to help both students and adults better understand feelings.
So what's the difference between anxiety and stress and pressure and fear and overwhelm? And what we find is that people just don't know the differences. And so what that means is that we are using words to describe our experiences that might not accurately describe our experiences.
Their program, called Ruler, teaches 5 skills for improving emotional intelligence: recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions.
What we argue is that emotional intelligence, in collaboration with general cognitive ability, produces the best outcomes.
And he says using language accurately is a key tool to achieving that better outcome.
When you have language to describe your inner experiences, right, you can communicate better, you can get your needs met, and importantly, you can develop the strategies that work best to help you deal with your feelings.
And whether it's in school or on social media, having access to the right resources is critical. Henry's hoping to do his part.
My mission is to just spread awareness and correct information, and to just encourage people to really look at mental health as not just this trend or this gimmick, but as something that is really impactful and is a true science in the world.
Savannah Sellers, NBC News.
Our thanks to Savannah for that story. Tonight here at 10:30, you can watch her and her new special report on teens under pressure, mental health and social media. That's tonight on NBC News Now, however you stream it. Still to come in just the last few minutes. Don't get mad at me, but there has been a major upset on the first day of March Madness, like the kind of upset that busts bracket. It is probably busting your bracket. We're going to tell you about it next. First day of March Madness. I hate to tell you, your bracket is probably busted because a 15 seed Princeton just upset number 2 seed Arizona. It is Princeton's first tournament win in 25 years. ESPN says of the 20 million brackets that exist, only 0.17% have perfect brackets remaining. So this was a buster for a lot of people. Also today, you had number 1 seed Alabama winning its first game of the tournament over Texas A&M Corpus Christi. But there has been a shadow hanging over what should be a good vibes only moment. Look at this. This is a security guard that's been assigned to protect Brandon Miller, the star of the Crimson Tide team in Birmingham. Why? Because Miller's coach says Miller's been getting threats after court testimony said he transported a gun belonging to then teammate Darius Miles back in January, who was involved hours later in the murder of a woman in Tuscaloosa. Miles was cut from the team and is currently facing murder charges. Brandon Miller's attorney says his client never touched the gun and never knew anything illegal would happen. Miller has not been charged with any crimes, and the University of Alabama says he is cooperating as a witness. This is also a big deal for Miller because he's expected to be one of the top picks in the NBA draft. Sam Brock joins us now with the latest. And I listen, the coach of Alabama here, Nate Oates, has been pretty protective of his players, but this is a moment where we said it. There is a shadow hanging over this team.
This tournament this year, Hallie, is unlike any NCAA tournament we have ever seen before. And obviously there's always excitement and buzz and last-second shots, but you really can't think of an analogous situation to this one. And that pressure obviously is having an effect because today Alabama did run away in their first-round matchup. Brandon Miller, Hallie, who averages 20 points a game, was 0 of 5, 0 of 3 from downtown, 0 points. The best player in the tournament did not score in this opening game. Now, the coach, you mentioned Nate Oates a second ago initially, he didn't even acknowledge Miller's involvement in what happened until it came out in court. Right. But a police officer testified that Miller was texted to bring the weapon, and that's when the coach started addressing this for the first time anyway, and then said he was in the wrong spot at the wrong time, had to roll that back and apologize, and ultimately has placed the focus on the family that was affected by this brutal violence. Now, as far as what Oates said about the security guard that you just mentioned, take a listen.
If you guys saw some of what I've seen sent his way, I think you'd understand some of the messages from people that can sit behind fake email addresses, but who knows whether they're real or not.
Hallie, I spoke with someone who covers college basketball for USA Today, Dan Woken, and I asked him, have you ever seen a situation like this where an armed security guard was inside of an arena during the NCAA tournament? Never in his career for decades has he seen that until now.
You know, and this is not, I mean, listen, Alabama, as we said, and if people are watching us now, presumably they're watching us on a split screen with the tournament, right? If they're into NCAA basketball, because it's happening as we speak. Alabama's going to win, almost certainly going to win more games, right? Like, they're a very good team. They're a #1 seed in this tournament. And you have Brandon Miller, who's got a lot on the line, obviously, including the fact that he is projected to be picked pretty high in the NBA draft here. Talk through some of that, like the way that there are implications beyond just this tournament.
Yeah, it's a great point. And this is not just a guy. This is the best player in college basketball, as you talk to those who really follow the sport and followed Alabama throughout there. He was the SEC Player of the Year, the Freshman of the Year, and the MVP of the SEC tournament. That had never been done in the history of NCAA basketball until Brandon Miller. So this is a high-level prospect, top 5, top 3 pick level prospect. And the question becomes, is this going to impact his draft stock? I come back to the fact, Hallie, that there have been no charges so far against Brandon Miller, and the school has not taken any punitive action either. And when I asked what the feeling is like around college basketball from Dan Woken at USA Today, he said there is dismay in the sports world that Alabama has not done more. We are going to cover that on NBC Nightly News this evening.
We'll look for that. We'll look to see what happens at any post-game press conference. You'll be all over it here on NBC News, on NBC News Now. Sam Brock, it is good to see you, as always. That does it for us this hour. More tomorrow, same time, same place. Top Story with Tom Yamas starts right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.